Jake, that's obviously a very strong team.
Strongest team I've ever picked since I've been at the Bulls.
Probably, yeah. Nice to have guys like Willie and Kirtley back. Came in at 13, and
as I said, I mean it's by far the strongest team, and I'm talking about, yes, you can make it stronger, and I'm talking about with injuries and all that. But when you can only, often you get injuries, or you get guys away, or you get this would be the strongest team in 4 years that we put on the field. And I'm talking about from an experience point of view, from a achievement point of view. We almost got a Springbok in every position. Got some Springboks on the bench. So yeah, I mean but like we all know, doesn't mean that because you've got a strong team it's an automatic. It's just an exciting thing to see. 4 years are coming together now. We got whole front row Springboks. As I said, back row. That team could almost, as it is, that pack of forwards could almost play international rugby as a group. Which is I saw Simon's reaction as we were reading it out, and he was exactly that. It's exciting team. Have Willie, Kanan at centre, I know he can play as well. And then it creates opportunities for Seb and Apiwe on the wings with Kirtley there as well. So, it's a nice balance. I'm looking forward to see how we play, because there's everything there. We got good forwards, good backs, pace, good skill. So, but I must reinforce, I'm not saying therefore it's, there's still a job to be done, and it's still, still a big game against Ulster, who we also have managed not to, to roll over, because they're a good team, and they've toured well in South Africa. They might not have got all the results, but they've toured well in South Africa. Came close twice to beating Stormers in the year they won in Cape Town. So, it's going to be a tough game.
Just Hendrik Wessels, will he be a swinger in the front row now?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm going to give you some feedback. Simpiwe was in hospital with a heart thing this week, and so it's actually a blessing in disguise that Jan Hendrik played prop, lucid prop for South Africa, because it means that we can use him there. I still am very, very sure that he can be a hooker, and especially with the props we have in South Africa. If you go through Ox and Gerard and Chunu and all the guys who can play lucid there. He's waiting in terms of that position going to be much longer than hooker, I think, and that's why part of what I want to do is try and give him an opportunity to play both. But I'm not going to move him away from the fact that I still want him to be a hooker. But for now, with Simpiwe in hospital, obviously, he got like a virus. That's again on Saturday, didn't tell anybody, just wanted to play, and then post the game when the doc sent him in, the heart surgeon said, we must put him in hospital for a couple of days. So it's not as, it's serious. So I just don't want to risk that. And at least now we got Jan Hendrik who wants to play both.
You mentioned Matanzima's heart issue. Is it what's the problem? I know that issues like these are generally doctor-patient confidentiality.
Yeah.
And there's also the need to understand that internal medicine issues are generally something that need to go via POPIA. But what's been the prognosis from the doctor with regards to whatever that Simpiwe Matanzima has?
Yeah, let me just say this though, that it's like if you get a virus, it can affect your heart, and when you're an athlete, it can affect some more than others. Just from a professional doctor, I think it was just making sure we sent him to a specialist, looked after him. I think he's out of hospital now. But what I meant by that is he didn't tell anybody. He got up in the morning and we withdrew Wilco low before kickoff because he wasn't feeling well. And I think maybe Matanzima or Simpiwe thought, listen, if I now go and tell him I'm sick, it's not going to look too good. So instead of him saying to us, listen, I'm feeling a bit down, he just went on and played. And then afterwards he said to the doc, I'm really struggling to breathe, and so there's nothing untoward. There's no agenda or skullduggery there. The youngster probably didn't want to tell Doc, and in hindsight, I wish that he had, because then at least we could have looked after him sooner rather than later.
It's just the gravity of a heart condition. It's not even any skullduggery. That's the thing. Issues like those are actually quite serious.
Yes. And also, let's not forget, we had Cornel Hendricks here. So the heart, when someone says heart, we make sure that we. In fact, Doc was actually quite disappointed that he didn't tell him, because he thought, geez, he should have come and told me. Man, God forbid the guy has a heart attack or something. And I don't want to get it melodramatic, but we've had prop forwards die of heart attacks at Loftus before, So, But in his defence, I mean, that again just shows sometimes how young and naive these youngsters are. And he obviously now got a bit of a fright. He went into hospital, and as it turns out, he's not available for this weekend, and I'm sure probably not even for next weekend. But at least now the doc is looked after him, and he's been obviously been given the care that he deserves.
Jack, aren't we running the risk of if you have Jan Hendrik, and he's a talented player. You've made your statement as far as what you want him to do. Running, and you're old enough to understand and remember Lance Sherrill, Brent Russell,
yes.
Those guys that were chosen because of their brilliant talent.
Yeah.
In more than one position, and the length of their play, their career suddenly stops because it becomes a conundrum type of thing.
Yeah.
Aren't you scared of that?
But I'm going to tell you something interesting, Simon. I think that's changed completely.
Yeah.
I think the fact that you're more versatile and more available to play different positions probably in today's times, it's probably better. In the old days, it was probably Achilles' heel for a guy like Brent Russell, and it was, as you say, being a master of everything. Being not master of none, but a jack of all trades is one thing. But I think that the whole dynamic's changed now. I think if you can play different positions, the fact that you have substitutes with 7-1 splits and 6-2 splits and all that sort of thing, I think it can count in your favour. But saying that, I just think from a pecking order point of view, a 22-year-old loosehead prop is okay. A 22-year-old hooker is better because you can get away with it. Because just a 25, 26, 27, 28-year-old, even a 30-year-old prop just is older and stronger as he gets more mature. And in Jan Hendrik's case, it's a bit like when I had John Smith. He's too good not to have him on the field, and he's too good not to fast track him. And if I look at the box setup, and again, because I'm lucky enough to understand the box because I was there, you got Gerard's going to be, he's young. You got Ox, he's young. Chunu from the Sharks is young. Kitsia, I didn't mention him because he's been injured, but he's still around. So on the pecking order of loose heads, and I'm obviously not a national coach or selector now, but you would think that a 22-year-old loose head prop is not going to jump ahead of those guys, significantly. Whereas I'm 100% sure if you look at the hookers in South Africa, and a lot is spoken about when Bongi finishes and Malcolm finishes, who is the next guy. And I mean, that is an area where I think Jan Hendrik himself realizes if he does it well there's no reason why he can't, he can't jump the queue in terms of being the next guy into that team. But to say Simon, I mean, the reason he wasn't released is because when they warm up on match day, he actually covers two positions. So you don't need a hooker and a prop now warming up with the team so in some ways it can be a massive bonus for you that you can, and I'm sure as he gets older, and as he gets more mature and as he gets more settled in a position and the team changes its dynamic, he will know which position is going to be his. I'm talking about nationally.
Just to follow up on, unless I've missed it, Rassie hasn't announced on certain position or certain players that are not available for domestic play, stuff like that. Not at all.
You mean in terms of now?
Yeah.
No, it's an interesting debate, and I think it's important that you guys understand this. If a guy doesn't play now, and he doesn't play, we got 3-week tour. We've got a game in 3 weeks. That's 4 weeks. That's a month. And they get together and they play Scotland. You could have a situation where 2/3 of the national team haven't played a rugby game for 6 weeks. Now, I'm not sure if that's a positive or a negative for the box. I'm talking about from the setup point of view, the planning point of view. If you play now, is it going to count in your favor or against you? So it's a very difficult one because in some ways I'm quite keen to rest some guys, but then are they going to be match ready by the time they run out against Scotland? And it's funny, the youngsters, they don't know if they're going to go, and then the other thing is you rest them, and then they don't get selected. And so what we don't want, and I want this to be understood, and I'm sure you all understand, no player at the Bulls is going to manage himself for the national setup. That's not going to happen. So the Bulls are going to play for the Bulls, and yes, we want every guy to be a Springbok, but I'm not going to start managing players so they can only play test match rugby.
Coach, maybe just to follow up, are you having discussions with Rassie and them about the situation?
No.
Thanks, Andy.
Just on that, remember earlier this year we spoke about the 8-week resting. There's a lot of
Yes.
speculation. How does that work now with the Springboks specifically? Is it going to be on an individual basis?
Yes.
Is that how it's going to work?
Well, let me say this to you. So in the real world, when you finish like the old days, cricket season and rugby season, you finish rugby and then you have an 8-week or whatever off season, and then you start gymming and you start running, and there are players like that finished and they have their time off. And don't forget, during the Currie Cup, we had to rest certain guys. Now, how it works is it's quite simple. In the ideal situation, you would give the guy 3 weeks off, as in completely off, 3 weeks to build up with no contact, and 2 weeks with contact before he can play. But and I'm glad you asked that question, but it's impossible to play in 3 competitions with Springboks that are in and out and be able to put teams on the field all the time of every guy who's had leave at enough leave at a certain time.
Yeah.
So to give back to the Springboks, if I use an example, let's use 2 examples that are relevant. One is a guy like Jan-Hendrik Wessel, who never had leave. He got selected in the initial squad. So he's been away for 9 weeks. He's only played 1.5 games, but he's been away for 9 weeks. He in effect still needs his leave. Okay. So the only way you can do it, you can't give him 8 weeks off now because they go on tour in a couple of weeks' time as well. So in his case, I've got to find 8 weeks over the next 5 months. And that means it might be 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, 1 week, whatever. A guy like Roux Nokia, he had 4 weeks off post, and then he got called in late into the Springbok side. So I actually have to find him 4 weeks in the next couple of months. But there's nothing to stop me from giving him more than 4 weeks, because if I find that he's played and played and played, I might then manage him for the Bulls. In other words, I might say, look, I know I owe you 4, but I'm going to give you 6, 7 weeks because I need you to be ready for the Bulls. So it's going to be a case by case basis, but it is much more difficult than people think, because once you have to give guys leave for 8 weeks, and you play in 3 competitions, and you have Boks who you don't know if they're going or staying, because that's what I was saying to Simon. I can rotate a guy now, but if he doesn't get picked for the Boks, and it can happen, then he could sit out for 2 months without playing rugby.
On that point, it's clear that the issue now lies within having a global season. Will the global season now be probably the remedy to all of this? Because you'd find that New Zealand, for example, are playing February to June.
Yeah.
And then they'll have that block off after Rugby Championship.
Yeah.
And then they'll play NPC, which probably ends in about a week's time.
Yeah.
And then after that, they've got end of year tour. Then they've got a bit of November. What was the old Southern Hemisphere season? South Africa now are playing a hybrid season where they play the international rugby down south, but they play the club rugby up north. At what point, yes?
I wish I could answer and tell you what I think is right, because I don't think there's a quick fix. Now, some guys would say, do we need the Currie Cup? Because that would have been a window for everyone to have off. And then if you say that to the unions that play Currie Cup, that's not what they want to hear. And others would say, when the Six Nations on, we should play the Rugby Championship, because then they're playing Six Nations, the URC teams, and we're playing the Rugby Championship. But that's obviously way out of my control or the union's control, as in franchises. I'm not sure what the way forward is, but I can tell you it's very difficult to manage a squad, and especially because I don't know what the thinking is, like any other franchise, on what the Springbok team would look like in 6 months' time, 12 months' time. It can change. So I'll just use a typical example. Let's use Ulrich Lowe and Cameron Hanekom. Which one's going on the end of your tour? Which one do I rest? I don't mind resting one if because I've got the other one to play. I might rest the wrong one, he gets picked, and I've rested the one that's now been off, and it can happen. No one said there's no guarantee that you're going to be in the national setup all the time. So in my case, if I use Cameron and Ulrich, which is an easy example for you guys to understand, do I play Cameron now and give Ulrich time off, and then Cameron plays so well he gets picked to go on the end of your tour, and Ulrich doesn't go, and then we sit with a guy who hasn't played for the club now on the basis that he was going to. And it's difficult because you can't hold a gun to the national coach's head either and say, listen, do I play him, don't I play him? Because that's part of the job being the national coach. You pick who you need for that occasion and for that tour.
Willie, Willie.
Yes.
Is it fair to ask? Let me rather ask that Willie is sort of mothballed because of his tendency towards concussion and the effect of long-term concussion?
No. I think, to be fair to Willie, I'm going to tell you, I wish, I've said this to you many times, Simon, I wish people would appreciate how good he really is. 97 tests for South Africa, is on the brink of becoming, I think, the 13th Springbok, whatever, to play 100 test matches. That's an incredible achievement for anyone in this country. Over more than a decade of playing professional rugby. I think that oversensitivity of the mothballing, and that, I don't think that's the case. I think a guy like Fassi played really well. Now, like anything, it puts pressure on any player that's an incumbent. In my case, he's stepping up to the mark now for me, because I've got Goosen out and I've got Devin Williams out, and I've got and he needs to have 8 weeks off because he was in the initial squad. Even though he didn't play every test, he needs time off. I'm going to have to find a way in which I can allow him to have that time off. But at this point, I can only sing his praises by he's helping us out. Even though he's on the brink of 100 tests, he still plays for his club. Don't underestimate the value of what senior players do for your club when they are like that. Curtly playing with an injury in the final with a plate in his face. Gerard Steenkamp strapping his knee in a game when we needed him. Willie doing this. The effect you have on your squad and the effect you have on the pathway of the juniors and the image you create in your club is exactly what we want, Simon. So, as I said, I can't talk highly enough about him. I could easily give him off now, and he probably deserves it. And he probably thought he was going to get close to 100 test caps, which, let's be fair, anyone wants to achieve. But he's manned up. He wants to play. He wants to be part of the club. His wife stays in Paarl. He stays here. So there's a lot of other dynamics too, which he has to give us in terms of sacrifice. So no, I don't think it's at all a case of mothballing, or it's about he is what we're looking for in this club.